I still remember the exact moment my heart finally turned to stone. Funny how after decades of disappointments, it was something so seemingly small that pushed me over the edge. But that's how it often happens, isn't it? A lifetime of silent sacrifice, of swallowing your pain, of making excuses for the people who should love you the most. And then one day, one moment, one sentence, and everything just breaks. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. This journey is just beginning, and I have a feeling some of you might need to hear what comes next. My name is Elizabeth Harmon. Most people call me Ellie, though my daughter Cassandra, Cassie, hasn't called me anything in almost 2 years. Not until the invitation arrived. I live alone in a modest ranch-style house in Deer Creek, Missouri. The same house where I raised my children after their father walked out on us when Cassie was 7 and Michael was 10. It's quieter now, of course. The walls that used to echo with laughter, arguments, music lessons, and teenage door slams now just hold the gentle ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway and the occasional meow from Churchill, my Maine Coon cat, who's almost as old as my estrangement from my daughter. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, embossed with silver foil and tied with a pale blue ribbon. "You're invited to celebrate the upcoming arrival of baby boy Reynolds," it read, with Cassie and her husband James's names underneath. 2 years of silence. And now this. Not a phone call, not a coffee date, just a formal invitation to celebrate the grandchild I didn't know was coming. I should have thrown it away. Part of me wanted to. But despite everything, a small voice whispered that maybe this was an olive branch, a chance to start again. That small voice had been wrong many times before, but hope is a stubborn thing. I called Michael first. My son, the peacemaker. The one who still came around for Christmas and my birthday, though always alone, never bringing his wife Lisa or their 2 children. The one who said he was stuck in the middle, but somehow always ended up on his sister's side when it mattered. "Mom, you should go," he said, his voice careful, measured. "Cassie's different now. Pregnancy has softened her. She talks about you sometimes." "What does she say?" I asked, trying not to sound too eager. A pause. "She says she misses the way things used to be." I didn't point out that the way things used to be meant Cassie living in my house for 6 months after her first divorce, rent-free, while I worked double shifts to cover the mortgage. Or that it meant me watching her children every weekend so she could find herself through a series of relationships that worried me sick, but that I never criticized. Or that it meant me co-signing the loan for her business, the one that failed when she lost interest, leaving me to pay off $40,000 of debt well into my retirement years. Instead, I said, I miss her too. I spent $300 I couldn't really spare on a cashmere baby blanket in the softest shade of blue. I had my hair done for the first time in months, bought a new dress that hid the weight I'd gained since the loneliness had driven me to find comfort in late-night bowls of ice cream. I even practiced what I would say when I saw her. Nothing about the past, nothing about the hurt. Just how happy I was for her. How excited I was to meet my grandchild. The baby shower was held at a vineyard about an hour outside of town, a place with rolling hills and a renovated barn that glowed with string lights. I recognized some faces from Cassie's longtime circle of friends, a few relatives from James's side. Michael was there with Lisa, though they were deep in conversation with James's parents and didn't see me arrive. Cassie was radiant in a flowing white dress, her stomach a perfect round globe, her face fuller but still beautiful with that same heart-shaped smile that could charm anyone. She had always been the pretty one, the charismatic one, the one people were drawn to. She saw me. For a moment, her smile faltered, and I felt my own smile freezing in place. But then she walked over, accepted my awkward hug with a stiff one of her own. "You came," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Of course," I replied. "I wouldn't miss it. You look beautiful." She nodded, glancing around the room as if hoping someone would rescue her from the conversation. "Thanks for coming. There's food and drinks over there. I should get back to greeting people." And she was gone, swallowed by a group of young women who circled around her, touching her stomach, laughing at whatever she was saying. I found a seat at a table near the back, placed my gift on the designated table that was already overflowing with packages wrapped in blue and silver. A waiter offered me champagne, but I asked for water instead. I wanted to stay clear-headed, to not give anyone a reason to whisper about me. An hour passed. I made small talk with a cousin of James's who didn't know who I was, watched as Cassie opened gifts and exclaimed over tiny outfits and handmade quilts. My gift remained untouched at the bottom of the pile, and then it was time for speeches. James went first, thanking everyone for coming, his hand protectively on Cassie's shoulder. Next came Lisa, surprisingly, reading a poem about motherhood that made several women dab at their eyes. I noticed she never once looked in my direction. Then Cassie stood, one hand on her belly, the other holding a glass of sparkling water. "I want to thank all of you for being here," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the barn. "For supporting us on this journey. Starting a family. It's terrifying and wonderful, and having all of you in our lives means everything." She turned slightly, and I realized she was looking at an elegant woman in her 60s with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a designer dress. Patricia Reynolds, James's mother. But I especially want to thank someone who has been a guiding light for me, especially these past few years. Someone who showed me what true motherhood looks like. Patient, understanding, and unconditional. I felt my chest tighten. Was this the moment? After all this time? "Patricia," Cassie continued, her voice thick with emotion. "This is for you." The room faded around me as she raised her glass higher. "This is the woman I wish had raised me. She will be the one and only true grandmother to my child." The room erupted in applause. Patricia stood, wiping tears, embracing my daughter, while James beamed beside them. Michael was clapping too, his eyes carefully avoiding the back corner where I sat. Frozen, my untouched water glass trembling slightly in my hand. No one noticed when I stood. No one noticed when I walked out, leaving the expensive blanket behind. No one called after me or followed me to the parking lot where I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel, not crying. No, not crying at all, because something was happening inside me. Something cold and clarifying, like ice water being poured slowly, deliberately down my spine. Every slight, every disappointment, every moment I had excused away with, "But they're my children," it all crystallized into a single, sharp point of understanding. I'd been a fool, a complete and utter fool. I drove home in a state of such calm that it should have frightened me. But fear requires uncertainty, and I was no longer uncertain about anything. That night, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, the one who had helped me after the divorce, who had drawn up my will years ago, naming my children as beneficiaries of my modest estate and the life insurance policy I'd faithfully paid into for decades. The second call was to Frank Delaney, an old friend who worked in private investigations. We'd dated briefly after my divorce, but remained friends when the romance fizzled. The third call was to a storage facility across town, where I rented a climate-controlled unit and arranged for 24-hour access. I slept dreamlessly that night and woke before dawn. By the time the sun rose, I had already packed several boxes and loaded them into my car. Old photo albums, baby books, the art projects and school awards I'd carefully preserved. 30 years of memories, documented and saved because that's what mothers do. But I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was something else now. Someone else. As I pulled into the storage facility, my phone rang. It was Michael. "Mom? Where did you go yesterday? Cassie was looking for you." The lie came easily. I felt ill. The drive, the heat. I didn't want to ruin her day. "Oh." He sounded relieved, probably that he wouldn't have to defend my early departure to his sister. "Well, she wanted to thank you for the blanket. It was really nice." "I'm glad she liked it," I said, my voice pleasant, empty. "Listen, Mom, what Patricia said, what Cassie said about her, you know how Cassie gets carried away. She didn't mean—" "It's fine, Michael. Truly. I understand perfectly now." And I did. For the first time in decades, I understood exactly what I needed to do. "I have to go," I told him. "I have a busy day ahead." As I hung up, I looked at the boxes in my back seat. the physical evidence of a lifetime of love and care, soon to be locked away. Tomorrow, much more would join them. And the next day, something would arrive at Cassie's door that would change everything. Because I had finally learned what my children had known all along, that love without respect is just another form of servitude. And I was done serving. The first package arrived at Cassie's door exactly 1 week after the baby shower. I know because I had it delivered with a signature requirement, timed for 9 a.m., early enough to disrupt their morning routine, but not so early that they could claim harassment. Inside was a simple leather-bound book. On the cover, embossed in gold, Financial Records, Cassandra Reynolds, 2015-2023. No note, no explanation. Just 8 years of meticulously organized bank statements, receipts, and loan documents. Every cent I'd given her. Every bill I'd paid. Every financial rescue mission I'd mounted. Detailed with dates and amounts. Totaling just over $157,000. My phone rang that afternoon as I was deadheading roses in my garden. Churchill lounged nearby in a patch of sun, his tail twitching occasionally when a butterfly ventured too close. "What the hell is this?" Cassie's voice was shrill, indignant. "Hello, Cassandra. I assume you received my gift." "Gift? You call this a gift? A bunch of old receipts? What are you trying to prove?" I snipped a wilted bloom, watching as it fell to the ground. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm simply organizing my affairs. By sending me this accounting? What, am I supposed to pay you back now? After that speech Patricia gave, you're trying to make me feel guilty?" I almost laughed at the irony. "The speech Patricia gave? I believe it was you who said she was the mother you wished had raised you, the one and only true grandmother to your child." Silence, then a huff. "You know I didn't mean it like that. I was emotional. Pregnant women say things." "Yes," I agreed mildly. "People say things. And sometimes those things are exactly what they mean. So this is, what? Revenge? You're tallying up what you think I owe you for being my mother?" I cut another dead bloom. "Not at all. Consider it a baby gift, a history of generosity for you to pass down to your son. A family legacy." "You're unbelievable," she spat. "I'm hanging up." "Before you do," I said, my voice still calm, pleasant even, "you might want to tell Michael to check his mail tomorrow." She hung up without another word. I continued with my gardening, feeling the warmth of the sun on my shoulders, the slight ache in my knees as I knelt among the flowers. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened, light. The next day, Michael received his package, similar to Cassie's, but with one key difference. His contained not only financial records, but also printed copies of emails and text messages, conversations between him and his sister about me, planning sessions on how to handle the mom situation, discussions about keeping their children away from my negative influence. Messages I never should have seen, except that Frank Delaney was very good at his job, and Michael had always been careless with his passwords. His call came in the evening, his voice low, controlled. Always the diplomat, my Michael. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Hello, Michael. Did you receive something interesting in the mail?" A long pause. "This isn't like you." "No?" I asked, genuinely curious. "What am I like then?" Another pause. "You're forgiving, understanding. You don't hold grudges." "Ah," I said, stirring the soup I was making for dinner. "And how has that worked out for me?" "Mom, if this is about what Cassie said at the shower, it's not just about the shower, Michael. It's about 2 decades of taking and taking and taking, while I kept giving. It's about you telling your wife that I'm emotionally draining, and that's why you don't bring the kids to see me. It's about Cassie borrowing money she never intended to repay while complaining to her friends about my outdated views and embarrassing clothes." His breathing changed. "How do you know about those conversations? Does it matter? They happened. You said those things. You meant them. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated," he argued, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Perhaps," I conceded. "But when those things are said consistently over years to multiple people, that's not frustration, Michael. That's character." "So what do you want? An apology?" Fine, I'm sorry. We're sorry. Just stop whatever this is. I tasted my soup. It needed salt. It's far too late for apologies. And this isn't something that can be stopped. This is consequence, Michael. This is what happens when people take kindness for weakness for too long. Are you threatening us? Now there was an edge to his voice. Not at all, I said, adding a pinch of salt to the pot. I'm simply informing you of a change in our relationship dynamic. For decades, it's been about what you need, what Cassie needs. Now it's about what I deserve. And what's that supposed to mean? It means there will be 2 more deliveries. One tomorrow, one the day after. And then we'll be done. He started to say something else, but I hung up. Churchill jumped onto the counter, eyeing my soup hopefully. I scratched behind his ears, smiling at his rumbling purr. No soup for you, I told him. But I think we have some of that fancy salmon left. The next morning, identical manila envelopes arrived at Cassie's and Michael's homes. Inside each was a copy of my new will, dated the day after the baby shower. It outlined in clear, legal language how my estate, my house, my savings, my life insurance policy, would now be divided. 50% to the local animal shelter where I volunteered, 25% to the Community College Scholarship Fund for single mothers, 25% to a trust for any grandchildren who sought contact with me after turning 18. Nothing for Cassie. Nothing for Michael. Also included was documentation of the irrevocable trust I'd established, ensuring they couldn't contest the will after my death. Cassie called, screaming about family obligation and selfishness. I let it go to voicemail. Michael texted, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, knowing that tomorrow would bring the final piece of my plan, the piece that would hurt the most, because it wasn't about money or inheritance or material things. It was about memory, about legacy, about who we really are when all the pretense is stripped away. The final packages were larger, requiring special delivery. Heavy boxes containing photo albums, baby books, school reports, art projects, awards. All the physical evidence that I had been a mother who cared, who showed up, who celebrated every milestone, who kept every drawing, every Mother's Day card, every report card. With one crucial difference. In each item where my name had been, it was now carefully removed and replaced with Patricia Reynolds. Every "to Mom" inscription altered. Every Elizabeth Harmon proud parent, digitally changed in the photographs of school events. I had effectively erased myself from their histories and replaced myself with the woman my daughter wished had raised her. Cassie arrived at my door 3 hours later, the box clutched in her arms, her face blotchy with tears. Michael's car pulled up just behind hers. For a moment, seeing them there on my porch, my children, coming home, I felt a flicker of something. Not regret, exactly, but remembrance of who we had been to each other once. Then Cassie spoke, and the moment passed. "How could you do this?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "These are our memories." I looked at her calmly. "Are they? I thought you'd prefer Patricia in them." They stood there on my porch, my children, now grown adults with lives of their own, looking at me as if I were a stranger. Perhaps I was. Perhaps the mother they thought they knew had never existed at all, just a convenient fiction they'd created to justify their behavior. "May I help you?" I asked, as if they were door-to-door salespeople interrupting my evening. "Help us?" Michael echoed, his voice strained. "Mom, you've defaced family heirlooms. You've photoshopped our entire childhood." I stepped aside, gesturing for them to enter. No point having this conversation for the neighbors to hear. They hesitated, then came in, Cassie still clutching the box of altered memories, Michael following with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. My living room was immaculate. I'd been cleaning obsessively since the baby shower, removing photos of them from the walls, putting away the knickknacks they'd given me over the years. The space felt lighter, less burdened with sentiment. "What I've done," I said calmly, "is honor your wishes." Cassie made it very clear who she considers her true mother figure. I'm simply adjusting our shared reality to match. "This isn't reality," Cassie spat, dropping the box onto my coffee table with a thud. A few altered photos spilled out. Her 5th birthday party, her high school graduation. This is sick. It's manipulative. Is it? I asked, genuinely curious. You stand in front of a room full of people and declare another woman to be the mother you wished had raised you, and that's not manipulative? That's not sick? Michael stepped between us, ever the mediator. Mom, what Cassie said was wrong. We both know that. But this, he gestured to the box, this is not the way to handle it. And what is the way to handle it, Michael? I asked, my voice still even. Should I have cried, made a scene, begged for my daughter's love and approval? Tell me, since you seem to be an expert on maternal behavior, what is the appropriate response when your child publicly rejects everything you've ever done for her? He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Cassie was leafing through the altered photos now, her hands trembling slightly. How did you even do this? There are hundreds of photos here. I have time, I said simply, and motivation. But why? She asked, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What's the point of all this? To hurt us? To make us feel guilty? I considered the question carefully before answering. No, Cassandra. Not to hurt you or to instill guilt. Those are emotions, and this isn't about emotions anymore. This is about truth, about consequences, about the stories we tell ourselves and others. Michael ran a hand through his hair. A gesture so like his father it made my chest tighten for a moment. So what's the end game here, Mom? You cut us out of your will. You deface our childhood memories. You send us accounting ledgers of everything you've ever spent on us. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said, and I meant it. I want absolutely nothing from either of you. That's the point. They exchanged glances, clearly not believing me. I've spent decades wanting from you, I continued. Wanting your time, your consideration, your respect. Wanting to be included in your lives in any meaningful way. Wanting acknowledgement for the sacrifices I made. I'm done wanting. I'm done hoping. I'm done making excuses for behavior that, if it came from anyone else, would be considered unconscionable. Cassie's hand moved protectively to her pregnant belly. So that's it? You're just canceling us? Your own children? Your grandchild? I'm not canceling anyone, I corrected her. I'm accepting the reality you've both created. In that reality, I am not a mother worthy of respect or kindness. I am not a grandmother who deserves to know her grandchild. I am, at best, an obligation. At worst, an embarrassment. That's not fair, Michael protested, but weakly. Isn't it? I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder, handing it to him. These are printouts of your conversations with Lisa about me, about how I'm too needy, how I always make everything about myself, about how you avoid bringing the children to see me because I'm hard to be around. His face paled as he flipped through the pages. How did you get these? I ignored the question. And these, I said, handing a similar folder to Cassie, are your text exchanges with friends after I helped you move into your new house last year. The one where you mock my clothes, my hair, my outdated opinions, where you tell them I'm only good for free babysitting and loans. Cassie's cheeks flushed dark red. You spied on us? You hacked our accounts? That's illegal. So is fraud, I replied evenly. Which is what you committed when you used my credit card to pay for your spa weekend last summer without my knowledge. Or when Michael borrowed my car and got a parking ticket that he never told me about, leaving me to deal with the consequences. I sat down in my armchair, suddenly tired. Not emotional, just physically exhausted by their presence, their indignation, their refusal to see themselves clearly. I don't expect either of you to understand what I'm doing or why, I said. I don't expect apologies or remorse. Those things would require self-awareness that you've never demonstrated. What I do expect is for you to leave my home now and to respect the boundaries I've established. Boundaries? Michael looked bewildered. What boundaries? I will not be attending family functions. I will not be lending money or providing childcare. I will not be answering late-night calls for emotional support or crisis management. I will be living my life for myself, and only myself, from this point forward. Cassie made a choking sound. So you're just abandoning us? Your own children? When I'm about to have a baby? The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. Abandonment requires an existing responsibility. You've made it abundantly clear that I have none toward you, and Patricia will make an excellent grandmother, I'm sure. This isn't you, Michael said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. The mom I know wouldn't do this. The mom you knew was a fiction, I replied. A convenient character you created, endlessly forgiving, infinitely giving, with no needs or feelings of her own. That person never existed. She was just a role I played because I thought that's what mothers were supposed to do. I stood again, making it clear our conversation was ending. You should go now, both of you. And if we don't? Cassie challenged, her chin lifted in defiance. If we want to work this out? There's nothing to work out, I said. This isn't a negotiation or a temporary punishment that you can wait out. This is my life now. My choice. You'll regret this, she said, her voice hard. When my son is born and you're not part of his life, you'll regret this bitterness. I looked at her, this daughter I'd carried inside me, had raised through illness and heartbreak and triumph, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no wistfulness. Just a clear-eyed understanding of who we were to each other now. I've had many regrets in my life, Cassandra, I said quietly, loving you both too much to set proper boundaries, excusing behavior I would never tolerate from anyone else, believing that maternal love meant endless self-sacrifice. But this moment right here, this will never be among them. I opened the front door. Goodbye. They left finally, Michael dragging a still protesting Cassie by the elbow. I watched from the window as they stood in the driveway, arguing with each other, gesturing back toward the house. Eventually, they got into their separate cars and drove away. Churchill wound around my ankles, purring loudly in the sudden silence of the house. I bent to stroke his fur, feeling the steady thrumming of his contentment. It's just us now, I told him, and that's more than enough. That night, I dreamt of wide-open spaces, of horizons unfettered by obligation or guilt. I woke feeling lighter than I had in years, as if I'd put down a burden I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. The next day, I changed my phone number. The day after that, I closed my social media accounts. A week later, I began volunteering at a literacy program for adults, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for between Cassie's dramas and Michael's crises. I waited for regret to come, for maternal instinct to override my resolve. It never did. Instead, something else bloomed in the spaces where worry and disappointment had lived for so long. Something that felt remarkably like peace. 3 months passed. Autumn arrived, painting the trees in my neighborhood with fiery oranges and deep reds. I planted bulbs in my garden, tulips and daffodils that would burst through the soil next spring, long after the winter's chill had passed. A promise to myself about endurance, about rebirth. I hadn't heard from either of my children since that night in my living room. No calls from new numbers, no unexpected visits, no messages passed through mutual acquaintances. It was as if they had taken me at my word, finally respecting at least one of my wishes. Or perhaps they were simply waiting me out, assuming that maternal instinct would eventually overcome my resolve, that I would break first, reach out, apologize for daring to stand up for myself. If so, they would be waiting a very long time. I settled into new rhythms. Mornings at the literacy center, helping adults who had slipped through educational cracks learn to decode the written world around them. Afternoons in my garden, or at the local museum where I'd begun giving tours 2 days a week. Evenings with Churchill and books I'd always meant to read, or films I'd put off watching because someone always needed something more important from me. It was during one of those quiet evenings when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and for a moment, I considered not answering, but curiosity won out. Standing on my porch, looking uncomfortable in a suit that seemed slightly too tight around his middle, was James, Cassie's husband, the father of my unborn grandchild. Mrs. Harmon, he said, formal and stiff. We had never been close, James and I. He'd always seemed slightly intimidated by me, though I'd never given him reason to be. James, I replied, not inviting him in. What brings you here? He shifted his weight, glancing back at his car in the driveway as if contemplating escape. I'm here about Cassie. Of course he was. In our few interactions over the years, James had never once sought me out for any other reason. Is she all right? She's fine. Well, physically fine. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, can I come in? This is awkward enough without having to do it on your doorstep. I considered refusing, but again, curiosity prevailed. I stepped aside, allowing him into my home. James stood awkwardly in my living room, declining my perfunctory offer of tea or coffee. Finally, he spoke. Cassie doesn't know I'm here. She'd kill me if she knew. Then why are you here, James? He sighed deeply. Because she's miserable. She cries all the time. Her blood pressure is up, which isn't good for the baby. She's not sleeping, and it's affecting us. Our marriage. Our preparations for the baby. Everything. I waited, saying nothing. This was not my problem to solve. She made a mistake, he continued. What she said at the shower. It was cruel and thoughtless. I told her so at the time, but she was... He trailed off. She was what? I prompted, my voice neutral. Showing off, he admitted, looking pained. For Patricia. For my family. They have money, you know. Status. Cassie's always felt, I don't know, like she has to prove she belongs with us. And rejecting her own mother publicly was her way of proving that? I asked, unable to keep a slight edge from my voice. James winced. It was wrong. She knows it was wrong. What I'm trying to say is, she's sorry. Really sorry. And yet, she's not the one standing in my living room saying so. She's afraid, he said simply. Afraid you won't forgive her. Afraid of what you'll say. And after what you did with those photos, those financial records, she's hurt and angry too. I see, I said, though in truth, I didn't. The audacity of it, to hurt someone deeply, then be angry when they refuse to be your emotional punching bag any longer. So, what exactly are you asking of me, James? He straightened, seeming to gather his courage. Come to the hospital when the baby is born. Be part of your grandson's life. Let Cassie apologize properly in person. Start fresh. I almost laughed at the simplicity of it. As if years of disrespect and my public humiliation could be erased with a hospital visit and an apology offered only under duress. And if I refuse? I asked, curious about his response. James looked genuinely confused. But he's your grandson. Your family. Yes, I agreed. Just as Cassie and Michael are my children, my family. And yet that connection didn't stop them from treating me with contempt for years. Why would it be different with a grandchild? Because it's a chance to break the cycle, he said with surprising insight. To start over. I studied him, wondering if he really believed what he was saying, or if this was just another manipulation, another attempt to bring me back into line. Did you know, I said conversationally, that after Cassie's first marriage ended, I took her in, supported her financially and emotionally for almost a year? That when she decided to start her boutique, I co-signed the loan because no bank would take a chance on her credit history. That when that business failed due to her mismanagement, I was the one left paying off the debt. James looked away. I knew some of it. And did you know that when Michael lost his job 3 years ago, I cashed in part of my retirement fund to help him make his mortgage payments until he found work again? Or that I've never once been invited to spend a holiday with him and his family, despite living less than 30 miles away? Mrs. Harmon, the point, James, is not to catalog their failings or my sacrifices. The point is that relationships, even family relationships, require reciprocity, respect, and care to survive. For too long I convinced myself that maternal love meant accepting scraps of affection and basic courtesy in return for complete devotion. I was wrong. He was silent for a long moment. So that's it? You're just done with them? With all of us? I'm done with one-sided relationships, I clarified. I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done making excuses for people who should know better. And the baby? He's innocent in all this. A low blow, but not unexpected. Yes, he is, I agreed. And when he's old enough to seek me out on his own, should he wish to, I'll welcome him. My will provides for him directly when he turns 18, bypassing his parents entirely. James's eyebrows shot up at that information. You've really thought this through. I've had decades to think about it, James. Decades of hoping things would change naturally, that my children would mature into the kind of adults who treat others, including their mother, with basic dignity. I was wrong to wait so long. He stood, recognizing defeat when he saw it. Cassie's due in 3 weeks. If you change your mind, I won't, I said, not unkindly. But I appreciate your effort today. It shows character. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, I told Cassie she was wrong. About what she said at the shower. About how she's treated you. I've always respected you, Mrs. Harmon. Thank you, James. I hope you'll be a better parent than your wife has been a daughter. After he left, I sat in my darkening living room, Churchill purring on my lap, and waited again for regret, for doubt, for the maternal longing that society had always promised would override all other considerations. It never came. Instead, I felt a curious sense of validation. James's visit had confirmed what I'd long suspected, that my children saw my love as a resource to be exploited, rather than a relationship to be nurtured. Even now, facing the consequences of her actions, Cassie couldn't bring herself to approach me directly, to take responsibility without qualification. My phone buzzed with a text from the Literacy Center coordinator, asking if I could come in early tomorrow to help with a new student. I replied immediately that I would. As I set the phone down, I realized I was smiling. This, then, was the unexpected gift of my children's rejection. The freedom to say yes to a life that served me, not just them. The space to discover who Elizabeth Harmon was when she wasn't defined by maternal sacrifice and endless forgiveness. 3 weeks later, I received a birth announcement in the mail. Alexander James Reynolds, 7 lbs 4 Oz, 21 inches long. A photo of a red-faced newborn, wrapped in the blue cashmere blanket I'd left at the shower. On the back, in Cassie's handwriting, your grandson. If you want to meet him, call me. I placed the announcement on my mantel, next to a framed photograph from my recent museum fundraiser. I looked at the baby, my grandson, and felt a complicated mixture of emotions. Not regret, not exactly, but acknowledgement of what might have been, in another version of this story. I did not call. Some bridges once burned should remain ashes. 1 year passed, then 2. My life settled into patterns that pleased me. Volunteering, gardening, occasional travel with friends I'd made at the museum. I dated briefly, a kind widower named Robert who taught architecture at the community college. But we ultimately decided friendship suited us better than romance. I sold my house, the one where I'd raised my children, and bought a smaller place closer to the lake. It had a sunroom where Churchill could nap in patches of warmth, and a garden that burst with wildflowers every spring. I felt no nostalgia leaving the old house behind. It had served its purpose, just as I had served mine as a mother. Occasionally, news of Cassie and Michael reached me through the small-town grapevine. Michael had been passed over for partner at his law firm. Cassie and James were struggling financially. Her latest attempt at entrepreneurship, a children's clothing boutique, was failing just like her previous ventures. Their son, my grandson, was apparently a bright, curious toddler with James's steady temperament rather than Cassie's mercurial one. None of this information stirred me to action. I observed it with the detached interest one might have in characters from a book read long ago. Recognizable, but no longer emotionally engaging. Until the day Patricia Reynolds died. I heard about it from Robert, who had attended the same charity function where she'd suffered a massive stroke. Collapsed right there during the silent auction, he told me over coffee. Gone before the ambulance arrived. I nodded, absorbing the information without comment. Robert, who knew my history through the careful, edited version I'd shared, watched me closely. Will you reach out to your daughter? I imagine she's taking it hard. No, I said simply. That chapter is closed. He accepted this without judgment, one of the qualities I most appreciated about him. 3 days later, as I was planting new rose bushes along my garden path, a car pulled into my driveway. I straightened, brushing dirt from my knees, and watched as Michael emerged, looking older than his 42 years. "Mom," he said, approaching cautiously as if I might flee or turn him away immediately. Perhaps I should have. "Michael," I replied. "What brings you here?" He gestured vaguely to my garden. "New place looks nice. Suits you." I waited, not making this easy for him. After a moment, he sighed. "You've heard about Patricia Reynolds?" "Yes. Cassie's a mess. James too, honestly. The funeral's tomorrow." I said nothing. My silence a question in itself. "Look," Michael said, running a hand through hair that had more gray than I remembered. I know things are bad between us. I know we deserve it. But Cassie needs her mother right now. Her real mother. The irony was so rich it could have nourished my garden. Does she? The same mother she publicly rejected? The one she wished had never raised her? Michael winced. She was wrong. We were both wrong. About so many things. Yes, I agreed. You were. A beat of silence stretched between us. So you won't come? Not even to support her during a time of grief? I regarded my son thoughtfully. This man I'd once known better than anyone. When your father left us, I grieved. I was terrified, alone with 2 small children and no support. Did either of you consider my grief then? Or any of the times after, when I faced loss or hardship on my own while still caring for you both? He looked away. That was different. How? Because my pain was inconvenient? Because acknowledging it might have required you to see me as a person, not just a resource. Because we were kids, he said defensively. And when you were adults? When I needed surgery 3 years ago and neither of you offered to help during my recovery? When my sister, your aunt, died, and you both sent flowers but couldn't be bothered to attend the funeral? Was my grief less real then, Michael? Less deserving of support? He had no answer for that. I turned back to my roses, kneeling again in the soft earth. Cassie made her choice clear at that baby shower. Patricia was her true mother. Now she's lost that mother, and I'm sorry for her pain. Truly. But I am not a backup plan, to be pulled off the shelf when convenient and discarded when no longer needed. It's not like that, he protested weakly. It's exactly like that, I replied, tamping soil around a new plant. And we both know it. Michael stood there for several long moments, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Finally, he spoke again. There's something else. Something you should know. I looked up, curious despite myself. James left Cassie 3 months ago, filed for divorce. He has primary custody of Alex. The business is bankrupt. He hesitated. She's not doing well, Mom. Patricia was helping her financially, and now that's gone too. I absorbed this information, waiting for the maternal concern to overwhelm my resolve. It didn't come. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and I meant it. Suffering brought me no joy, not even the suffering of those who had hurt me. But Cassie is an adult. She'll have to find her own way through this, just as I did when your father left. Michael's face hardened. So that's it? Sorry to hear that. Good luck? She's your daughter. Biology doesn't erase behavior, Michael, I said, rising to my feet again. It doesn't entitle anyone to unlimited chances to inflict pain without consequence. What about forgiveness? He asked. Isn't that what mothers do? Forgive? I brushed the dirt from my gardening gloves, considering my words carefully. Forgiveness is possible when there's genuine remorse, changed behavior, and an understanding of the harm caused. Without those elements, it's not forgiveness, it's permission. Permission to continue treating someone as disposable. She's remorseful, he insisted. We both are. Are you? Or are you suddenly aware that you've lost your safety net? Your emotional support system? Your financial backup plan? I shook my head. Remorse that appears only when you need something isn't remorse at all, Michael. It's manipulation. He stared at me for a long moment, perhaps truly seeing me for the first time in decades. You've changed, he said finally. No, I corrected him. I've simply stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. Someone who would accept crumbs of respect in exchange for unconditional love and support. What can we do? He asked, his voice smaller than I'd heard it since he was a child afraid of thunderstorms. How do we fix this? That's the point, Michael. You don't fix it. Some things once broken, stay broken. You learn to live with the consequences of your actions, just as I've learned to live with mine. And Alex, your grandson? He's innocent in all this. Yes, he is, I agreed. And as I told James, when Alex is old enough to seek me out independently, I'll welcome him. Until then, he has his father, who seems to be a decent man. And he has you, I assume. Michael nodded. I try to help where I can. Then he'll be fine. I turned toward my house. I have a lunch appointment, Michael. I need to get cleaned up. He made no move to leave. Will you at least think about coming to the funeral? For closure, if nothing else? I paused at my back door. I found my closure 2 years ago, when I finally accepted that the children I raised were not the adults I'd hoped they'd become. I wish you and Cassie well, Michael. I truly do. But my well-wishing will be from a distance. After he left, I showered and dressed for my lunch with Robert and 2 other friends from the museum board. As I applied lipstick in the mirror, I studied my reflection, the silver in my hair, the lines around my eyes, the set of my mouth. I looked serene, unburdened. That evening, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, watching fireflies illuminate the gathering dusk. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Funeral is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. First Presbyterian, just in case. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked an afternoon tour at a botanical garden 2 hours away, something I'd been meaning to do for months. The next day, as Patricia Reynolds was laid to rest, I walked among exotic flowers and lush greenery, taking photographs of particularly beautiful specimens. I felt no guilt, no regret, no sense of obligation unfulfilled. What I felt was something rarer and more precious, the peace that comes from acknowledging your own worth, from refusing to participate in relationships that diminish rather than enhance your life, from recognizing that some wounds can't be healed through forgiveness alone. Some require the cauterization of complete separation. My children had made their choices. I had made mine. And in doing so, I had finally become the mother they deserved, one who taught them, through unyielding consequence rather than hollow words, that how we treat others matters, that respect is not optional in meaningful relationships, that love without boundaries is not love at all, but servitude. It was perhaps the most important lesson I would ever teach them. Whether they learned it or not was beyond my control, but I had, at last, learned it myself, and that was enough.